This is our book review on Paleofantasy. My name is Cefax Rab.
My name is Ariana Saldivar.
My name is Anaya Shah.
I'm Kate Wojciechowski.
My name's Ryan Yick.
And today we're going to do a review of Paleofantasy.
So for the introduction, I just broke it down into 5 different sections. So starting with evolution, these are kind of like the main points of the book that we found. So the evolution point was kind of the misconception of linearity. And we felt that the book discusses that the misconception is that evolution is linear. The author, Zuk, argues that it is dynamic and humans are continually adapting through their diets and their lifestyles. The second point was adaptation and that it's dynamic. So, similarly to evolution, she emphasizes that adaptation is dynamic. The author illustrates how humans' habits have evolved and that many factors determine the way that we adapt. The third point is trends. And the author discusses how the paleo diet or the trend is not necessarily historically accurate. She claims that we have a misunderstanding of history and that these trends are not what people think that they are. Fourth, we have environment, and our diets and our lifestyles and our habits are all decided in part by our environment. Today, many of us live differently in different environments than those that we mirror our diets after. So again, this was sort of a misconception that people don't have a full understanding of. And then finally, the topic of complexity. So biology, culture, and environment all play into human adaptation. And the book dives into all of these factors and explains their roles in the complexity of adaptation.
Okay, so moving on to the thesis. The thesis challenges the idea that humans were perfectly adapted to a Paleolithic lifestyle, arguing that the evolution is a continuous and complex process without a perfect endpoint. Zhu critiques modern paleo trends, suggesting they oversimplify human evolutionary history and ignore our capacity for ongoing adaptation. Her work illustrates that evolutionary changes are still occurring, shaped by environmental, social, and technological developments. So the 5 main points that the thesis shows are challenging the paleofantasy concept. This is where Zhu critiques the romanticized notion that the Paleolithic era represents an ideal state for human adaptation, arguing that this view misunderstands evolution as a static process rather than a dynamic, ongoing one. Evolution as a constant and complex, contrary to the belief that humans stopped evolving after the Paleolithic era, Zuk emphasizes that human evolution continues, adapting in response to environmental, technological, and social changes. Myth of the perfect paleo lifestyle. Zhu contends that current trends promoting paleo diets and lifestyles misinterpret ancient human life and oversimplify complex evolutionary needs, ignoring that human ancient life was often harsh and challenging. No universal paleo blueprint. Evolutionary pressures have created genetic adaptations, for example, lactose tolerance in response to changing environments, showing that human adaptations are far from uniform and continue to diverge. Health and lifestyle misinterpretations. The mismatch theory, which links modern health issues solely to deviations from ancient lifestyles, oversimplifies human adaptability. Zuk argues that attributing modern diseases to this alone disregards the role of ongoing evolution.
So some points of evidence for this thesis. One point was that evolution is ongoing, with the example of lactose tolerance. So if the evolution of lactase persistence, Not all early people raised cattle, and that can tie to environmental factors such as extreme climates and terrain that offered little food to herds. Those who did, however, were highly favored in passing on that gene for persistence due to benefits of gaining calories. The notion that dairy is not paleo is put to rest since our ability to digest those products depends on our genes, which have changed over time. And the second point was that evolution is not linear. There's not really a set path or ideal state. It could happen overnight and is influenced by the present. So one example from this from the book was that crickets in Hawaii were being targeted by predator flies because of their singing. It was thought that most of the population had diminished because the sounds of crickets fell silent. However, it turns out that the population had bounced back and had evolved by removing the apparatus that produced that sound. And this all happened within less than 5 years or 20 generations, which is a blink in the eye of the span of time. And then the final point was that early human diets varied widely depending on their environment. Some groups may have relied heavily on meat, while others consumed more plant-based foods. So the high variety in what groups ate was really tied to a varying range of climates and environments where humans lived. An example of this would be that northern people would eat more meat and less plant life, whereas coastal cultures would rely a lot on fish and aquatic wildlife.
And then for the strengths and weaknesses of Zook's thesis, she had some great scientific evidence. A lot of her main points were supported by credible sources. And she also did a good job at addressing some of the misconceptions about the paleo lifestyle and this paleo fantasy. And she shows how it shows the cultural influences and the impact on that perception. And then she also does acknowledge human adaptability throughout history and how humans have been able to respond to their environment and work with it as opposed to working against it. Some of the weaknesses of her theory, she does have some selective evidence. Throughout the book, she doesn't really do a good job at addressing the counterpoints for a lot of her arguments. And along with that, it seems like she might have a limited view of the paleo movement. She seemed to have a lack of understanding about the movement itself, why people support it, are interested in it, and why it originally gained popularity. And then also throughout the book, she seems to lack giving real world applications for a lot of her main points and theses.
So for the first one, she generally talks about misconception about evolutionary stasis. So Zook argues that the notion of humans being stuck in the Paleolithic evolutionary phase is flawed. Evolution is continuous, and humans have stopped evolving since the Paleolithic era. Her second point was debunking the paleo diet and lifestyle myths. The book critiques the popular paleo diet and lifestyle trends, which suggest that modern humans should emulate ancient hunting-gatherer practices to be healthier. Zook also explains that there was no single paleo diet because ancient diets varied widely based on location and available resources. And her third and final opinion was the complexity and variability of evolutionary adaptations. Zuck emphasizes that evolution does not lead to perfect or universally beneficial traits, but instead works with compromises based on environmentally demands. She explores how humans have complex adaptations that are context dependent and argues that a one-size-fits-all approach to replicating prehistoric lifestyles oversimplifies the evolution.